brain because I can never remember. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be your host today on Arch Talk 101. And before we get started, I want to let everybody know where you can listen or watch the podcast. You can listen to the podcast on Audible. Just go out there and search for it. It's free to listen to, as well as wherever you get your normal podcasts, like Spotify, and there's Google ones and all kinds of different places. You can get them there. You can also watch the video on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. I have a whole section just on archery stuff. And probably the best place to go watch it is join the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group because it gets up there and we have archers from all over the world, all kinds of levels, from archery instructors. I've been archery instructor for 30 years now. We have bow techs that can help you with questions like that. And we have a special guest with us today. Travis is going to be giving some words of wisdom and tips, and we're going to have fun talking with him and seeing what's going on in his world of archery. Travis, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Roy.
If you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little something about you and how you got started in archery.
So I'm Travis Woods. I've been around the outdoors most of my life. My dad kind of got us into that growing up. He was an avid hunter until he couldn't pull a bow back anymore in the last few years. So always taught us how to camp and fish. Hunting was one of his things that he really enjoyed. Got to watch him harvest several deers over the year and struggle with hunting alone and talking about those things. And that's kind of what pushed me towards it. Now I've got two little ones and trying to push them and trying to get them to understand how things work and where things come from is definitely something I enjoy trying to teach my youngins. So,
Yeah, that's what's nice. Everybody likes to eat the meat, but they don't want to think about where it comes from and
exactly.
who
Yeah.
has to kill it for them.
Yeah. My girlfriend has a hard time with it. She's like, I like eating it, but I can't see doing it. And I was like, well, where do you think it comes from?
But as long as you don't try and say you can't do it just because she can't do it,
Yep.
and a lot of them don't, and that doesn't mean you can't be an archer.
Correct.
Just because
Yeah.
you're an archer doesn't mean you have to hunt. I talked to a lot of archers that they never hunt. They just love shooting the bow and spend their time doing that.
And I've got a lot of friends that I shoot with in the ASA circuit here in Kansas that some of them don't have time for it. They enjoy shooting their target bow and just that's all they do year round.
So you're in Kansas now?
Yes, sir.
Whereabouts in Kansas?
Central Kansas.
Oh, Central. Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of in the east part of Nebraska, so I'm kind of pretty much straight north of you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I go up there every so often.
Yeah, well, come up here next time. We'll have to connect and um, go get something to eat or drink together. And
Oh yeah, for sure.
it's always nice being able to meet them and meet different archers from all the world. And this is a great format to do that. When you get to talk to archers, everybody has different stories. Um, what's probably your most memorable hunt you've been on?
So I've only been hunting for like the last 3 years. I kind of took a hiatus in it for a while, dealing with work and kids and things like. Just didn't have time for it. But in the last 3 years, I've probably my most memorable one right now is probably going to be my deer that I shot last year. Got a huge opportunity to hunt some private ground that is by draw only. So been out there a few times. I ended up getting sick right in right first part of October, and it took me out for about 2 weeks. So I couldn't even get out there, couldn't even scout for anything. And then finally got out there around October 23rd is when I finally shot my deer. That was my first one that I've ever shot. So I've got him hung up in my living room right now, just a Euro mount. But it's pretty awesome to see it. He was kind of a funky deer. Had one little kicker off to the front side, so it was neat. It was very exhilarating opportunity for me because I've never got to really harvest my animal yet. The year before that, I shot a deer, and the only thing he gave me was a frontal. He came straight in at 90 yards, and I'd been out there day in, day out, waiting for an opportunity, and I was seeing deers anywhere between 400 and 500 yards, and just never could get anything closer. And one day, just this big buck come in, did scrape and a lick at a branch and then just come beelining for me. It was probably the most scared I've ever been and nervous I've ever been, but the excitement for it was just there.
It kind of gets you hooked, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It does. And it really frustrates you as a hunter too sometimes when you have to make those shots and you 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 hope for the best in that scenario and you still can't recover the animal. It's really frustrating. It boggled me for probably 2 years now that I wasn't able to recover him.
Yeah, and if you've been hunting very long, you've made bad shots like that and not recovered deer.
Yep.
And I remember one time we spent probably 6 hours stomping through a milo field, and there was nothing there. And one had got up and run off, and wasn't hurt or nothing. And you make that mistake of hitting that broadhead on that one bone in the shoulder that nothing penetrates short of a rifle,
Oh yeah.
and it goes in an inch or so and bounces out.
Yeah, and I think that's about what happened. He bled for a long time, and we ended up finding him about a mile and a half later, and he ended up just taking off on us, and we never saw him after that.
Yeah, they can run a long time sometimes.
Oh yeah, it was impressive to see how much blood there was on the ground, and that we could track for that long, and still never found him.
Yeah, yeah, I've done that one I was telling you about. There was almost no blood on the ground, a little bit of blood here and there, and it didn't even bleed. So, it was going to be just fine. But we spent, like I said, probably a good 6 hours stomping through a milo field to see if we could find it, and nothing. And it's like, well, we're not even seeing any blood, and I know I hit it. It was like 10 yards away and 70 pounds with the Muzzy broadhead. So,
Oh,
yeah, there was plenty of power, but it just that one spot on that shoulder, you don't want to hit with a broadhead
right,
because nothing's
right.
going through it. If
Yeah,
that Muzzy at 70 pounds didn't go through it, ain't no arrow gonna go through it.
I agree there. I definitely agree. Shot placement, and that's something that I learned during that experience was shot placement. It doesn't matter what broadhead you use, it doesn't matter what poundage you use sometimes. If you have the right shot placement, it'll go through. It may not go all the way through, but it's going to go through.
Yeah. And I know I remember the first deer I killed, I was at a state park, and you could archery hunt or shotgun, for
Mhm.
like pheasants and stuff. And I see a trail that I know they're using, and in order to get over the brush that's on my side, as on the west side, and I had to get up about 19, 20 feet in a tree, and it was like a 40-yard shot. And the interesting part is about people don't look. I was up in the tree, hanging, screwing steps in and going up the tree. I was sitting there, and this couple and a kid come walking by underneath me, never seen me, never
Oh,
looked up and see me. And I was just sitting there just watching. They walked down further past, my hunting buddy was down at the other end, and they seen him because he was a lot lower than I was. But, I was probably only about 10, 15 feet up in the air.
and that's a
And
pretty reasonable distance to be up too. I never really get above probably 17 feet.
yeah, that's when I had to get up that high to get to the other side of the trail, which is on the other side of the bushes that were, as tall as I was. So I had to get up that high in order to get out there.
Oh yeah,
And this little bitty buck, he wasn't a big massive one or nothing, but it's my first year. So you don't care. Your first
yeah,
year that you can shoot it. If it's a
pretty much.
fawn, fine. After that, then let's talk about not shooting fawns. But it was a buck, and I'm shooting 2117 aluminums, which is a very heavy arrow, full length, so it was like 34 inches long, 145 grain Muzzy broadhead at 52 pounds.
Ooh, yeah,
Very
that's
slow, very heavy. And I shot, and when that deer turned around, I think the fletching stopped it from going out the other side of the deer.
oh yeah. I've seen
Uh,
that. That's
Almost complete pass through.
Yeah, that's when you know you've made a great shot when that arrow sticks in one side and out the other.
Yeah. That was my first year, and you always remember the first one that you get like that, and Of course, yours, unfortunately, your first one you didn't recover, but you did
Yeah.
get that other one, this last
Yeah.
season.
And
So
it was it
that's
was pretty
always
awesome. Like we even had my kids there when we finally got it home because we processed it all of ourselves the first time. I was like, you know what? I want to do this. I want to see what it's about, see what it's like, and really go through the process and actually understand I'm going to eat this. Like
right.
you get no better satisfaction than doing all that yourself. And then after you're done with it, you're like, I'm never doing this again. It takes up too much time.
That's kind of the other way around because you take them into a place and they say, yeah, you'll get your deer back. You know,
Yeah, you
there's
get
no
parts
guarantee
of
you're gonna get. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I had one place we took it in a couple times, but I mostly did it myself because I cut up the way I wanted, and everything else. But um, two of my friends both took deer in. The
Mm.
one was probably 50 to 75 pounds heavier than the other one. So you should have got back at least 25 or 30 pounds more meat because it was a much bigger one. They both went in to pick up the deer. They got the exact same amount back.
Oh my goodness. And that'd be
So,
heartbreaking too, because like
oh yeah,
you almost build a relationship with some of these animals that you go out and hunt, and you really want to have that animal back in its entirety. So
right.
it's very unfortunate when stuff like that happens and you find out, and it's like, ugh.
Well, and then of course Tom said something. It's like, hey, this is so much bigger. It's like, oh, okay. We haven't gotten some more meat. Grab some meat out of some place that he had extra meat. So, and it was also one of those places that donated lots and lots of meat to, like the Hunters for Hungry and stuff like that. It's like
Yeah,
you pay for the processing when you go in. So you can't tell me that many people didn't pick up the processing or donate that much meat when they've already paid for it up front.
yeah, yeah. And that's kind of the weird thing too, is when you do that, like you pay for all that, you should get back what you pay for because I've never had one sent in, so I wouldn't know exactly how they judge that price of processing if they do it by the pound or by whatever you want back. So
Yeah, and the thing is on a lot of that is you get to cut it up. If you cut it yourself, you know for sure it's your deer because you
yeah,
cut it all up yourself. You cut it the way you want it to be. Say you want more out of the back straps, more pieces out of there. You want them thinner or you want them thicker or you want the roast made in roast or you cut them up or whatever you want. It's the way you want to do it. Now I can see it, like if you want sausage made, because they're not going to make one deer's worth of sausage.
oh yeah, for sure.
They're going to mix stuff with it and they're going to make them in, you know, big old batches. So that you're not going to get your own back. But I made my own sausages and stuff. You get the from the butcher supply house, you can get the spices and stuff. And make pepperoni sticks. And I didn't want to put them in the cases, so I made them. I shot them out into little tubes and on wax paper, stuck them in the freezer, and then they froze.
Mm.
And then I could stick them in there and go grab one out and go. So it's kind of nice when you do your own. You can do it however you want to do them. It's really much better, and it don't take that long once you get the hang of it. I know guy I used to hunt with all the time. We had it all figured out where we'd come home. He had a hoist that could hang it up, and it wasn't but a couple hours, and we had it all cleaned up and deboned and ready to be processed. And uh, one of the little tricks that we discovered by accident one time, we had a deer that was, kind of dirty and stuff because, going through, so we took a hose and just hosed the inside down and hosed the outside down, and that hide come off so easy.
Oh really?
It was amazing that soaking it separates the hide from the meat or the
Hmm.
membrane in between there or whatever you have, and it just kind of gets really loose and it just pulls right off. I'm
Oh
like,
wow.
because normally when you clean them, you got to really pull. No, just soak the hide, comes right off.
I would have never thought that. I have a friend of ours that she absolutely loves doing meticulous things like that. So we sat there and watched her, and she dressed the whole deer off, and we were like, okay. Like she made it like it was a no-brainer and just the simplest thing ever. So it was pretty neat to watch somebody do it and actually learn how that's done. It's pretty impressive when somebody actually knows what they're doing.
Yeah, the first time my brother and I did a deer, my cousin over in Iowa said, "Hey, I'll give you half the deer if you guys want to cut it up." We'd never cut one up before, so we're grabbing books. That was before the internet, so you couldn't just Google how to process a deer because there was no Google, there was no internet.
Yeah.
So we got books and stuff. We looked it up, and it's like, oh, okay. So we just kind of cut it down, and we did what we needed to do with it, and give him his half, and we kept our half and split it and had fun.
Yeah, and that's what it's about sometimes. I mean, some people just don't know, and you're like, "Hey, I'll split it with you." Okay, cool. Instead of being money exchange, it goes back to just trading.
Yeah, and I think he just didn't want to mess with it. He's a farmer, so he's figured, well, I'd rather just have half of it and get back to farming.
Right, right. Farmers don't have time for that.
No, although it don't take too long. But so, have you got your kids into archery yet?
So they're actually interested in it. They're kind of young still to really um, trying to get them to understand how to do it is the first step for me. They watch me quite a bit when we go to the range and things like that. Um, and I talked to them both already. Like, look, I'm going to get you one, but we're going to start with like a Genesis bow and just really work through the fundamentals. Because where they go to schools, they can actually do it through the NAS program. So I want
Yeah,
to get them started early, and then that way they have something they can do, and it has the discipline there. You don't have to be, you know, a huge athletic person to shoot a bow. That's
right.
one of the major things that people don't understand is you don't have to be this extravagant athlete. You don't have to be hitting the gym every single day to do that. Yes, there is muscle structures that you're not going to be using when you're weightlifting or whatever when you use a bow. I've seen several people and videos out there that these bodybuilders can't hardly pull one back at 70 pounds. We're like, I do that on a daily. Like, it's not hard, but I have that muscle structure built for that.
Right.
You have to take the time and build those muscles up because it's not a muscle you would normally ever use in your everyday life.
No, that's a muscle that there's really nothing you're going to do in normal life that works your archery muscles except
Yep.
shooting a bow.
Yep.
And I was talking to a young lady one time, interviewed her on a podcast. It's probably been 3 years ago or so, and she couldn't participate in sports, but she picked up archery, and she was very good at archery. And you don't have to be an athlete to shoot a bow.
Yeah, I mean, there's prime example of one of the guys that was on the U.S. Olympic teams on the Paralympic teams. He has no arms.
Yeah,
He has
Matt
world
Stutzman.
title. Yeah, yeah, world
I've met him.
titles.
I've met him about 3 times already. I'm just trying to
Oh,
get him on the podcast, but it just seems to never work out to get him on here. But
yeah, he's super busy. I was just watching a video of him the other day that he was building a race car. I'm like, okay, this dude has no fear and nothing that's going to ever set him back. So that's super impressive that somebody like that, and that's where I think a lot of people should strive to understand that. It goes back to, like I was saying earlier, that you don't have to be an athlete. You don't have to be like, oh, well, I want to be a NFL player. Well, I'm not built for that. You don't have
right,
to be that body style or that kind of discipline. It's a whole another world when you get into archery that doesn't matter who you are, no matter what shape or size you are, you can do it. It's just going to take practice and dedication to really understand the fundamentals and then just go from there.
yeah, I know. I go up to Nebraska has their outdoor expo up at
Mhm.
Ponca State Park,
Oh yeah.
way up north in Nebraska. So basically straight north of me up here, but that's where I first met Matt. I've volunteered up there 3 times, and he's always up there. And not this last year, but the year before, this lady come through was missing her left hand. It was all
Mhm.
gone, and she was interested in shooting a bow. So the lady from Nebraska Game Parks, Christy, was there, was working at what they call the aerial archery, where they have these little round discs, and then you shoot them and you shoot them at with arrows with little like tennis balls on the front of them,
Oh
so
yeah.
don't stick them, it just knocks them out of the air. And so she went up and they got a compound bow, a right-handed one because she's missing her left hand, and they put a sling, an arm guard around her wrist, and then around the bow to hold the bow in place for her. And then they had her shooting within, maybe half hour, the time she expressed interest in it. And then we hooked her up with Matt happened to be walking by, so we hooked the two of them up there to because he's got connections to people that really do that stuff good. And then she actually had somebody make up basically an arm guard that actually will hold a bow for you. So if we run
Okay.
anybody that has that, we can strap that on them and they could be shooting a bow. And it's just one of those things that if you want to do it, there's no limits to what you can do.
Yeah,
You
there's
know,
absolutely no limits, and there's a ton of programs out there too that will help you get involved. Like breaking the barriers is another one where I think they're taking disabled veterans and veterans alone and just teaching them how to shoot archery and building that fundraising up for that.
yeah, I've talked to a couple of groups that really help out the veterans and stuff and get them in the outdoors, and that's a really really good thing to help, not just veterans, but anybody that has struggles with anything, get them out there and get them outside and doing stuff. And it's kind of nice to be able to get out and do that. And
No, for sure. Like it's definitely getting in the outdoors and just in the hunting industry alone. Like you hear all these guys that just like dying for September to come around and just waiting for either them elk or whitetails and just get back in the woods just because it is so peaceful and it is calming and nothing else matters. You're out there by yourself in your own thoughts and you can just clear your head. That's so nice to be able to do. And we take everyday life granted and don't realize the smaller things in life that fulfill that void that we're looking for.
right, yeah, it's nice being out there when you can. I've been out there and all of a sudden I hear this noise, look, and it's a leaf falling. I'm hearing a leaf falling through the air.
Yeah, you definitely it opens up your mind to a whole lot more going on. You get more in tune with your surroundings than you ever would anywhere else.
Well, how many people out in the woods have had birds come land on them or almost on them?
Oh yeah.
You know,
I
I haven't
just
had them
this
land on me, but close.
Yeah, just this last hunt I had a hawk come beelining for me and then he ended up seeing me and just darting off. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah. If you're if you're in camo, squirrels can't figure out what you are.
Oh yeah, no. I had
That
one behind me for like a half hour chewing on a walnut, driving me crazy.
you're
And not a care in the world. He just sat back there chewing. I'm like, okay, can we go somewhere else?
yeah, and even if you're in full camo, even if you wave, they just look at you and it's like, oh, okay, well, what is that?
Yeah. Yeah, they usually have no idea.
Well, to give you a little story on, I was in my tree stand and no deer was coming around enough, and this squirrel come out and and it's down on a branch below me, and I was like, oh, is squirrel season open? Because I had my hunting tag so I could shoot it. So I reached to my side pocket, pulled out my wallet, opened it up, pulled out the card. It says, "Oh, squirrel season's open." Put it back in my pocket. The squirrel's still looking at me. And then I draw back. The squirrel's still looking at me. He stopped looking at me until the arrow went through it.
And that's surprising too because I've watched several videos. I thought about going squirrel hunting with my bow, and I'm just like watching these videos, and these guys are flinging arrows at it, and that squirrel is absolutely ducking across the branch just before it gets there. I'm like, how? How is that thing that fast?
Yeah. Well, they probably weren't in full camo either, were they?
That I couldn't. I never saw them. I was just the videos like zoomed up and up under the squirrel, and I'm
Oh,
just like watching it. I'm like, you can hear the bow go off, and then all of a sudden that squirrel just goes underneath the branch. You're like, holy cow!
yeah. Being full camo.
Yeah, that would
That'd
probably be
definitely make a
helpful. And
difference. So you say you shoot ASA then? Is
yeah,
that
I
what you
shoot
said? Yeah.
ASA, and then just just this year I went to Chicago for the indoor nationals for the NFAA.
How'd that go for you?
Overwhelming to say the least. It wasn't quite as the turnout they were hoping for. I think there was about 800 archers from all over the world, of course. I was in the men's open class. Ended up not doing so great, but I was very happy with where I ended up. I wasn't dead last and I wasn't first, but ended up in the flights. And I was in flight 5 and finished third. So pretty impressed with that for my first time going to a huge national event like that.
Well, and that's the first time in an event. I bet you was, not sure what's going on, a little nervous of what's going on. Couldn't really concentrate as much on your shooting because, this is a big event. If you've never been there, it's like my first time in operating room. I wanted to look around, so I kept
Right.
so looking. They kept pushing me down. Finally, they tied me down, and then I went out. But yeah, the first time there, you want to kind of see everything, take everything in, and it's kind of, I can see I'd be a little hard to focus. And
It
um,
it was it was the first day was a struggle to try and focus and trying to get used to the atmosphere because it's one thing to be at your local shop and shooting a bow and then you've got a group of guys and you hear the bows go off, but when you're hearing hundreds of them go off and you've got a guy less than 2 feet from you, it gets pretty nerve wracking. Like you're watching his arrow, you're watching your arrows, and he's doing a little bit better, and you're like, I know I can do better than this, and it just starts compounding that nervousness that I want to do better, and you just work through it, and it was rough the first day for that. It was rough. But then my second day, it turned around a lot for me. I was doing really, really well. I was one arrow from a 300. I ended up dropping 1 point for the second day, and it was pretty frustrating, very frustrating for that day.
yeah, yeah, that it would be. So the next time you go in, though, it'll be a little bit nicer.
Right, right. And I'm hoping they do it at the same venue. I really liked the Naval Pier this year. A lot of people were really discouraged where it was at. In Chicago, most people have a stigma of Chicago. They're not quite wrong. It was pretty neat, pretty interesting to say. Um, Very odd people out there, especially coming from central Midwest where you just don't see skyscrapers every day and you don't have the busy city life.
Yeah, well, and it's Chicago too, so
And it's Chicago. It's never quiet. Never
yeah,
quiet.
yeah, and not my favorite city to go see.
It was nice the first time, and it'll probably be my last if they don't go back there again. So
Yeah, so that was your first NFAA shoot, and you did pretty good in that one. And what do you have coming up for shoots? You have anything scheduled?
um, right now, no. I'm just kind of doing my local ASA stuff. We have 3 more events, I think, and then we have championships in July. So I'm working towards shoot of the year and winning the state championship.
So, what do you do preparing for these different shoots? What's kind of your practice routine? And
Definitely trying to get arrows in, trying to get arrow count up, making sure that I'm physically ready. Other than that, I'm really working on my mental game and just staying consistent. Consistency is the name of the game when you're shooting a bow. If you change your hand placement, you're going to shoot in a different spot every time. Um, and then something I'm trying to work towards for next year is I want to go to Vegas. I want to go do the Vegas shoot and see how I do there. That's kind of like the pinnacle of archery is the Vegas um, shoot. So
Yeah, that would be a nice shoot to go to.
Yeah, this year it was kind of rough. I was talking to some people that went and listening to different people on podcasts that said it was pretty rough, but it was the first year at this venue, and they expected it. Definitely expected some setbacks.
Yeah, they change venues, and there's a lot of factors that can go into putting on a shoot. I know just the local ones when I was in the club putting on the 3D shoots, there's a lot to putting them up, putting the targets out, getting the distance, making sure everybody's, you got that safe angle, the 30 degrees left and right of the target that's clear for, you know, however long you want it to, need it to be so that you don't have any stray arrows flying and
Yeah,
just setting that stuff up is difficult and just a target shoot, setting up the lines, making sure they're all exactly that 20 yards from the target or 15 meters or whatever they're using for a distance, making sure they're all exactly the same, all the equipment's the same and everything else. So yeah, there's quite a bit to setting up. I actually interviewed a lady that was a coach, started out coaching and become an Olympic coach, and the amount of work that they have to do to put on a shoot was amazing.
oh
How much work goes into putting one on.
yeah, that would be a lot of work. We've got one tomorrow at our local 3D club, and I shoot there pretty much year round. As long as there's not snow on the ground, I try and go because that's part of my routine is just getting out, making sure that I can see my fiber, making sure my clarifier works the way it's supposed to in every condition possible because you never know what day to day is going to bring you. So that's part of that factor that you have to learn and understanding what your equipment is able to do and what it's not able to do.
Right, because here in the Midwest we could have um, no wind, we could have 3 4 mile an hour winds, we got 20 miles, we could have 30 mile an hour winds. We had 90 mile an hour winds come through and took part of a tree out for us.
Yeah,
So
it's a never dull moment here in the Midwest. So
no, it's like you got to go early morning. That's the best time you have of not having much wind because the afternoon, evenings, there's always wind and then it dies down by the time it's getting dark.
yeah, or when it's 110 degrees outside and there's no wind. So
Yeah.
that's so you got one of two evils. You either deal with the wind or you deal with the heat in the summer. So
But that's all your boat. That's all that you have to deal with. Your bow's going to act differently.
for sure,
As
I
it
found
hot,
that.
your strings will stretch a little bit more. Your limbs a little bit different. You get out in hunting season, yeah, and it's 30 degrees. Well, everything's stiffer. It's going to be pulling harder. It's going to shoot differently. Maybe your peep rolls differently.
Yeah,
Because
and you're going to be stiffer. Like
oh
you're
yeah,
not sitting there pulling the bow back. Waiting for a deer. You're not exercising them muscles to keep them warm. You're just trying to stay warm at that point.
right. And you can't get out and move around because you get to scare off the deer. If you're going to do that, you might as well go home.
Right, right. Yeah, this year I kind of bit the bullet and I ended up buying me a saddle. So we're gonna see how that goes this year for hunting season.
Yeah, I've seen people that have those. I actually interviewed a guy that shoots out of them. I I don't know. I haven't tried one, so I don't know. I'm not gonna say good or bad about them because I haven't tried them. I'm kind of old school. I still like to hunt out of tree stands.
Right. And that's me too. I was like really leery about it. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna make it a different advantage for me or not, or if even if I'm gonna like it. And I told myself, if I don't like it, I can always sell it. It's not a huge deal. And always go back to just a hang on tree stand. But I definitely like getting deep in there as far as what I consider deep is probably about a mile. Because here in the Midwest, there's trees, but sometimes you got to walk a long way to get to the right tree. So
Right,
when you're carrying 30 or 40 pounds on your back, it takes a while.
right. And then I got a big heavy backpack on too because I always carried a whole lot of stuff with me. In my backpack I've got you know lots of stuff. I've got ropes and I've got knives and I've got binoculars, first aid kit, You know, if I'm walking in and it's cold, I got my coveralls strapped to my backpack because I can't walk in with them. I'd be soaking wet by the time I get there. I have to wait till I get there to put them on. And then I'm already hot and sweaty, and then putting them on and climbing up the tree, and you have your water with you and everything else that you have in there, your binoculars, your calls, um, couple of backup releases.
For sure, especially if you've got a thumb button or a hinge, you better be carrying an extra one because you will drop it eventually.
Yeah, I've done that. I use a Carter Chocolate Addiction. It's a
Okay.
handheld, and one time I dropped it, and it's like, oh man! So I grabbed my Scott wrist wrap and put it on and use it. Now, when it gets really cold, I go away from the handheld because I don't really have much on there. I don't want to grab that cold aluminum because
Yeah.
it'll lock onto my loop. So it just sits there. So I just find this string and I don't have to look at it and just slide down and get it and I'll be able to draw. But the caliper one I have, it's just kind of hinges, opens up, it has the hook on it.
Mm.
And I can find the string and I know where it's at and I can hook it up without looking. The jaws that you open up and close, it's real hard to not do them without looking.
Yeah, you
Uh,
definitely have to look down, and that's definitely not the moment you want to be doing that in when you have to look down and try and do that.
every time I look down and look back up, the deer's looking at me. So
Yeah.
I don't like to do anything takes my eyes off those deer.
Yeah, so that's one of the very first things I do because I shoot a stand onyx and it'll clip right on the D loop, and I just set my bow up, put it on the hook, and then I go to work and getting my bag set up, my coffee ready, whatever I need to be functional for the day. I'm getting that up and ready going after that.
Next, then you can always grab your bow real quick and go. And
Yep.
of course, the first one we've done was strapped in.
Well, yeah, you always want to be strapped no matter what you do.
Yeah,
I've had to unstrap a couple times to get around limbs, and that's pretty makes you nervous real quick. And that's
right,
not something you
right,
want to do, but and there is some scenarios where you have to. But once you figure out you have to do that, you should always have a second rope.
right. And I interviewed the guys at Nebraska Game and Parks that do the tree stand safety, and I've got a podcast on that. I forget which one it is. Um, Look real quick here, see if I can find which one it was. Oh, tree stand number podcast number 107 or
There you go.
207. I talked to him and went through all kinds of stuff, and then you know I always knew if you're hanging off your safety strap, you've got about 5 minutes and you're dead anyway.
Yeah, especially with the way these are set up. And I know there's some reform coming into those. I've seen some different stuff, and we're seeing that coming out of the lineman industry, where they have basically the same thing that we wear. So it's the same scenario. If you fall, you've got to figure out a way to get yourself up and get your body weight off your legs so you can breathe. You got good blood flow. So it's important that you pay attention to how you fall, and sometimes you got to learn that, and it's not
Right.
always comfortable.
And a lot of the safety harnesses have a loop on them that you can drop down and put your foot in, but they're really kind of worthless. And they recommend taking an extra rope with you and you hook it around you, and you can use that to stand on.
Yeah.
And then you're actually tied into a Prisix knot. And there's a way that you can, we talked about it. You have to watch that podcast, but you tie basically little slip knots as close as you can together. You can put your feet together and push up on it, slide that knot down,
Oh yeah.
and then hang off that, put your feet on the next one, put pressure on it. The knot above it will snap open. So you're dropping down 6 inches at a time every time you do that, and you can descend down your rope.
Oh, that's
And
pretty good.
uh, yeah, he kind of showed it in that um, when I was talking to him, and it's out there. You can also watch it on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. It's out there as well. But um, yeah, and that's something that we don't practice how to do that.
Yeah, and
And
that's something that you have to watch. You got to learn it, and you should practice some form of recovery to get yourself either closer to the tree or back to your stand.
right.
And that's something that I think of when I'm in the tree is I try to make sure that my attachment point to the tree is as high as I can possibly get it. So when I'm in the seat, it's not at full stretch, but it's at stretch. So I'm not falling very far from my stand.
Yeah, when I set mine up, I can't fall out of my stand
Yeah.
because I set it up so as I'm sitting down, it pulls slightly as a slight little pull, and then as I stand up, sometimes if I try and go too far, it's pulling down on me,
Yep.
and I've actually used it a couple times to get a right angle, stand on there and kind of slowly leaning forward and then put the pressure on it. So I'm using it to hold me
Yep.
so I can make a shot around some stuff. Um, I don't do that a lot, but I have done that, where I needed to get out there and get around a tree where there was at, and because you don't cut down every tree so that you got clear open shots because then they see you.
Yep. You got to keep some cover. You got to keep some cover, and sometimes you got to make your cover like that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's something, I'd recommend going out and looking for podcast number 207, which is tree stand safety, and looking at that because that's something that, we all need to pay attention to and use those lineman lines. You can get a pack of three of them at Cabela's for, I forget what it was, like $90 or something like that for the three of them. It might even be
Yeah,
cheaper now. I don't remember
it,
now.
it's worth every penny. If you can get an extra one, it's worth it. Like there's zero reason why you don't have an extra one because you can get them on Cabela's, Bass Pro, Amazon, and learn it. There's so many. I think on mine, like on the because I have Muddy for my safety harness, and it comes with I think with a QR code that you can watch how you're supposed to use this safely.
Oh, yeah.
So there's almost no excuse why you don't know how to use it.
Yeah, and that's something, when I first started, nobody ever talked about that kind of stuff. I climbed up in a tree and I was just standing on the limb,
Yeah,
no strap. And then it's like, well, let me kind of strapped in. So I had a rope around my waist and then it went to just a belt that wraps around that has a D-ring on it. And then now, use full body harnesses. And they're fairly inexpensive for what you're getting. And they're easy to put on as long as you don't try to use when it comes with a tree stand.
yeah. Never use the one that comes with a tree stand. That's a
The
terrible, terrible idea.
on a good day they suck. You
Yeah,
can't figure. They're hard to figure out how to put them on.
yeah, because it's nothing but
It's
it's flat rope, and that's not the way to go. It's definitely once you put it on, you're like, yeah, no, it's uncomfortable. There's no way to get it adjusted the way you need it to because everybody's different. They make it very generic. This is what you're going to use, and that's not the way to go. Find you
it's
one
still,
that's going to be comfortable.
yeah, it's still better than nothing.
Way better than nothing. Way better than
Yeah,
nothing.
better than nothing, but still spend the money to get one of those harnesses. Muddy make like you said, you use a Muddy and they're a good quality uh, you know safety harness. Yeah, that's I was just gonna look up just so we can. It says we're talking about it. Let's just where's my share? We're just gonna share it. Can you see um
Oh yeah.
the money? Okay. Sometimes I don't get it right, but um they've got hunting blinds, apparel, jackets, trail cameras, tree stands, accessories, whole bunch of cameras, blinds. They got a lot of new stuff. Cameras. They make a lot of stuff. I don't know where to try to look and see
I've
the
never been on their
harness.
website to find it.
Yeah, I haven't either. First time I got out there, I'm looking tree stand accessories. I bet that's where it's at. Snap pins. scent discs, the hangers. Those I don't know if it's use those or not, but these little hangers, those are really nice because you can screw them into your tree and adjust it, hang your bow right on it, or use it for accessories.
Yeah, I've got 3 or 4 of them. I got one for my camera and then one for my bow.
And they have little hook accessories. Look and see all kinds of stuff out here. Wouldn't really plan on promoting muddy outdoors today, but I thought I'd see if we can show the harnesses. No, that's not the right page for it. So
Hmm.
I know they have them, but oh well. They have them. We'll have to look later, but they got tree stands and look there. I don't want to spend too much time trying to hunt it down, but yeah, there's all kinds of ones out there.
And that was nice. Like when I said I went to a saddle, is you pretty much have it all in one. You don't have to have a tree stand and a safety harness. You are the safety harness. It's all
Right.
attached to you, so it's always pretty nice for that. Um, I haven't had the luxury of using it yet, so I've got to get out and try and use it and shoot out of it.
Yeah, that's well, here's oh, I just did it a different way. I just searched for it. So I don't know why I couldn't find it on their website, but muddy crossover safety harness, $120.
Yep, they're worth every penny. Like you should not sacrifice your life for 120 bucks.
Right. And it's got a little tether at the top of your back where it should be. And the front, straps around your legs and it buckles on. You just put it on your shoulders and buckle it and go. And then a lot of if you look at you probably can't see them too well, but they're kind of stretchy where they'll dampen your fall. Because if all of a sudden you fall and it just stops you all at once, now that hurts. This is designed to basically rip out
Yep.
as you're falling. Uh, so that's easy to put on, quick to put on. The other ones you have, it says right leg, right shoulder, left shoulder, and then you're fiddling around with all these webbings and trying to put them on. And yeah, watch that tree stand safety video. We actually show those and why they're such a pain to use. But
Yeah,
yeah, we
and
want you to be
it's pretty
safe.
cool,
That's a
man.
big thing.
And you're spot on with it. It is a pain. Like if you have to think about how to put it on, it's not worth it. It should be very simple. Should be no brainer. You put your legs in, you put your arms through, and you're done.
Yeah, and the one thing we brought up is do not put it on over your big jacket.
No, be on your base layer as close to the body as you can put it.
Right. Well, it's tighter, and also if you get hot, how do you take your jacket off?
Yeah, yeah. Without detaching from the tree, how do you take your jacket off?
Because around here in the Midwest, it's going to be cold in the morning, and it's going to get warm in the afternoon. And I've been out hunting, and it's like, okay, I need my jacket off because I'm getting hot.
Yeah, yeah. That was like that morning that I shot my deer. It was warm that day, and it was gonna get warm the next couple days. And I was like, okay, well, I got out there. It was cool. Got my jacket on. Nothing real heavy. But with my hunting gear, I've got a slip in the back where you can slip your harness through and then go all the way through it. So if you had to take your jacket off, you just peel it off and you can just let it dangle if you had to.
Oh yeah, yeah. You got the hoods on there, then it's kind of a little bit more of a pain, but
Yeah.
because it's if you don't have that hole to slide it through, but yeah, you want to be comfortable.
Yeah, that's the name of the game. If you're comfortable, you can sit all day long. If you're uncomfortable, you're not going to make it all day.
Yeah, and the right boots definitely makes it. When I first started, I didn't have the insulated boots. They were just
Ugh.
some big boots, and yeah, I was hour and a half, 2 hours at most, and my feet were hurting, and it's like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah,
Um,
I've done that before, and it's you pay the price for it real fast because you can't sit
yeah,
out there.
I've got some of the lacrosse Ice Kings. They're
Oh,
they're
yeah.
rated at -60. You don't walk in them very far because they're
Nope.
big and heavy. But even if your feet are hot and sweaty, they don't get cold.
Yeah,
We
and
don't get cold enough around
I've
here.
I've tried, the hot hands where you put them in your feet. They got the ones for your feet. I've tried those. They don't work. The next thing that I want to try is some like electric socks and things like that that should work pretty well. Especially if you're one of the guys that like to hunt the late season here in the Midwest. It can be rough. It can be very brutal.
Well, I like using the merino wool socks. Those work really nice.
Yeah, I
And
got some from my hunting company that I use, and merino wool, that's a game changer. Absolute game changer. Your feet
I
stay
know,
dry, they stay warm, and you don't have to worry about anything typically.
yeah, I don't know if Bass Pro still does them, but they had their merino wool socks, their lifetime ones. At that
Mm,
time, they're like $10, and you wear them out, you bring back, get another pair. I don't know if they still do the lifetime on those,
right.
but those were, you know, I got a great big drawer full of wool socks, and I wear the merino wool, and I got another one out with two pair because my boots were designed to have two pair of socks on, and the merino wool, and then another one like a tree stand sock or something. It's not as good a wool, but it's two layers, and all these other wool socks, I never wear them.
Yeah, they
I was
just sit
like,
there like, I've moved on.
yeah, yeah, I got all those wool socks, and the merino wool's not itchy either on your feet.
No, it's very smooth. It's very comfortable.
I don't know what it is, but it's just um, a nice sock to use. So, what kind of stuff do you carry with you when you go out hunting?
So for like deer, I'll definitely carry a snack. Snack is always a must. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's loud, make it not loud. Um, Water always, and in the early mornings, a coffee. You got to have a thermos full of coffee. You got to find a way to stay warm on the early cold mornings. Um, Other than that, I'll carry a set of knives, um, a pen. And sometimes I'll even carry like a little notebook just to take notes if I see deer going in a certain spot. Um, Jotting down that note how far it was, why are they going that direction, what things did I find while I'm scouting for a new spot too. Um, let's see, what else do I carry? Uh, what else do I carry? Assortment of tools. Sometimes bows can be real finicky, and I will carry a set of Allens with me just to make sure that if I need to tighten up something, I've got it.
Right. Yeah. And they've got those nice Allen sets that are designed for archers. So they have the sizes that are used in archery sights and rests and stuff. And you never know. Something comes loose and nice to have a tool to fix. Otherwise your trip is over. If your rest comes loose or something, and it's nice to have those tools with you. And I have a Swiss Army knife that I carry that's got a whole bunch of different things on it that I
Oh yeah.
keep in a little thing on my pack. And so not only that, but I keep stuff for fire starters and first aid kit, and of course water, lots of water. um, I normally carry a couple of these bottles like this full of water. um, Even in the wintertime, I just drink water.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's important to have the water because you're gonna be sweating no matter if it's 10 degrees or if it's 50 degrees. You're gonna be sweating. Your blood's pumping, your adrenaline's going, so you're gonna be hot at times and not know you're sweating at all. And
yeah.
something else that I carry that's probably one of the most important things. My brother thinks I'm crazy. Is dude wipes. Like I don't know how many people carry around toilet paper or not, but
I do.
that yeah, like it's like one of the things you were like, oh, I didn't bring any toilet paper, and now you're using your sock. You
Yeah,
know, you know, why not carry a thing that you can use? It doesn't matter if it's for when you go to the bathroom, or if you just got to clean your hands because you just got done gutting the deer,
Right.
and you can leave it. It's biodegradable, so you're not hurting anything.
Yeah, I know one time, a buddy of mine, when he was still alive, was hunting and come back with his part of his sleeve was gone on his in his underwear. These the long thermals he was wearing. You
Oh
know,
man.
he had to go and it had nothing. It's like he cut sleeve off to wipe. That's why I always carry a roll of toilet paper in my backpack,
Yep.
as well as knives and binoculars. Um, I have my Carter release that I normally use, and then I have my Scott, which is I use in cold weather, and I have another handheld, um, True, was it True Fire?
Hmm.
Um, it's when I had my store, the rep called me up and was talking about it, and I says, "Well, to start with, I'm not going to carry anything that Walmart carries because I was getting that same the Patriot, the real low end one from PSE because I was a dealer for PSE, and I was getting them really cheap. I was paying like $11 and selling, and they were sold them for $20. So,
Yeah.
um, and they said he's got this handheld. I forget what it was called now, but it was like half the price at the time of a Carter. And so he sent me one to try it out. And I use it, but it's got too much travel in the trigger. You can tell it's half the price as well as half the quality.
Yeah.
It's just got too much travel, and travel in a release is a bad shot.
It, it definitely will create a bad shot, and it will create a lot of target panic for yourself too, because you're like, when is it going to go off? When is it going to go off? And all of a sudden now you're just punching it.
Right. So as that trigger starts to move, you're thinking about the trigger moving. And while you're thinking about the trigger moving, what are you not doing?
You're not thinking about your shot process. You're
Yeah,
not
you're not
moving
aiming.
your
You have to
Yep.
quit aiming to move your finger to make the release fire. And
Yep.
that's why I always tell uh, somebody that I run into is like, find out they're an archer. So you use a wrist strap. It's like, well, yeah, I give you first lesson free. Quit pulling the trigger. And I've had so it's like, oh, how do you know I'm doing that? Yeah, well, 90% of the people that are using a wrist strap are using it wrong anyway.
Yep.
And you even watch the hunting videos, they're all using them wrong.
Yep. Right at the tip of their finger, and you can just see them just wow, and just
Yeah.
get to go.
And then you watch a lot of the YouTube videos of these people, these guys and ladies that are shooting, and that finger is out, and it's like, okay, they're going to cram on the trigger. Yeah, cram on the trigger and grab the bow.
Yep. Yep.
And like,
And some people make it work really, really well for themselves. They have taught themselves that they can shoot that way, and that's the only way they'll end up knowing, unless they sit down and think about what they're doing and try something new and learn that process. And it is a very hard process. I struggle with it a lot of squeezing the trigger, not punching it, because you get that excitement. You're just ready to go. Your body's telling you fire, 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 and you're just like, I need to slow down.
and you still don't squeeze the trigger. You put pressure on it and let your back muscles actually fire it because you're still not moving your fingers or your thumb. And I see a lot of them that use the thumb release, and now they're using the least dexterous digit on your hand to pull that trigger. That thumb is not
Yep.
very dexterous, not like your other fingers.
Correct.
You play a piano with your fingers, not your thumbs,
Right. Right.
because them thumbs. Now on the keyboard, the thumbs are good for space bars. That they use nothing else.
Yep.
Um,
That's all it's used for.
and when I teach everybody the exact same way, and then I modify it for that individual person, of course. But on the handheld, I always bury it clear into the where the index finger and the thumb meet. That's where my trigger's at. And I don't those little knobs on them, I don't even use them. I take them off because all I do is encourage you to wrap around and try and pull the trigger. It goes inside of there, and then I pull back. Now, if I have to force fire, I just tighten my fist. I can just tighten it, it'll go off. But that goes off, and there's not my hand does not move. Nothing on my hand moves. And in fact, if I don't have my sling on my bow and I'm hunting out of a tree stand and I shoot, my bow will be on the ground
Oh yeah. Yeah.
every time.
You definitely should always have a sling on there because that's also one of those things where it reassures your mind that it's not going to fall out of my hand. You should never just be full death grip on that thing because you're going to torque it like crazy.
And then I've seen people derail their strings because they got a death grip on the bow. Because
Yep.
with that death grip, it actually twists it. And as you let down, you're twisting it, and next thing you know, the string pops off the cams.
Yep. Oh yeah. I've seen it several times where people have done that and not paying attention or pulling it back, trying to check their timing and just doing that number and it just goes off.
Yeah, best way to do that is just get a camera and record it.
Yep. Just simply put a camera up and watch it. That's the
Everybody
easiest way to
has
do it.
these things.
Yeah. You could
Just
spend
just
$5 or $10 on a tripod and just have it set up right there.
yeah. And that's what I tell people. I offer free service in the Archer Talk 101 Facebook group. If you want me to critique your shooting form, I've been an archery instructor for 30 years, so I've taught hundreds of people how to shoot. And it's like, just record it. Don't record it on YouTube because I don't like to put YouTube videos on there because I can't control the garbage that comes after the YouTube video. But who knows what it is? So just take it on your camera, upload it to the group, and we'll take a look at it. It's much easier now than it used to be when I first started. If you wanted to record it, you recorded it on a VCR tape
Yeah.
and you're playing it back and you can't do anything. I can actually take that video that's done on a phone and download it and put it in my video editor. I don't edit my podcast, but I edit my other videos I put up on YouTube. And I can go through and I can go frame, I can go frame at a time through the
Oh yeah.
picture.
And
And I
then
can see
that's the
exactly what's going on.
yeah, that's one way to really show somebody too is, hey, this is what you're doing. Yes, it feels like you're doing it, but you could physically watch that thumb or watch your hand doing the thing it shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And sometimes getting into the right release will change how you shoot tremendously.
Right. Yeah. Last year at one of the events I helped out at Nebraska Game and Parks, they had a lady down there that the release had it was a cheap release because they don't buy expensive releases for these things. People they come out these different events and they might be there once, for 2 hours,
Hmm.
and then they might not be there for another 2 hours. So we teach, a little bit more open stance because you don't hit your arm. When I teach a completely closed stance. But if you don't hold that bow or actually put your hand on that bow correctly, you will hit your arm. But if you hold the bow correctly, I shoot my recurve the same way, and I don't use an arm guard on my recurve. I don't hit my arm because I did the same way as I do the other one. Basically the key is between your index and thumb, that straight down to that bony part in between the thumb and little finger.
Yep.
And
Keep it on
always
keep it on that one side of the lifeline, and
right.
9 out of 10 times you should not hit your arm.
Right. And the thing that I like to show them is like, bend that arm back and hold your arm out, and I'll push on that spot. That's connected all the way through your whole arm. And then I'll put my finger over on the meaty part by the little finger. Next thing your hand wants to twist,
Yep. That's
and
the
then
same
your
thing
hand
I
on
was
it
gonna do.
hand twists the other way. Now, in martial arts, we use that advantage to lock your wrist up to throw you.
Yep.
Because if you do that, that twists the wrist, and you twist the wrist, and then next thing you know, you got it locked up, and you're either throwing yourself on the ground or you're getting broke.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and then um, last time when I was starting, ask if they have any martial arts experience, and if they say no, then I go on. If they say yes, it's like, oh, think of a heel palm strike,
Hmm.
because what a heel palm strike is taking that same bony part, and that's what you strike with, because all the force is straight to that target.
Yep. Yeah, it's a strong part of your hand, and it's bone on bone contact, so you're gonna be able to push all the way through.
And that's why I also use, because I combine, my archery, back tension release, martial arts training all into my form. That's why I use a completely closed stance, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that part of that hand and I'm going to push straight to my target, not
Yep.
off the side. And what I used to do is I had a string that goes around my thumb. That's my draw length. Poke my release on it. And I'm going to be pushing straight to that target. When that release goes off, If that string hangs up on my thumb, my form is wrong.
Okay.
So as you're doing that, you're pushing on the strings around your thumb, you're pushing to your target. So like if I'm doing towards the camera, when I shoot, that hand should go straight to the camera.
Oh
And
yeah.
that string should go straight to that point I'm aiming at. Now, because there's not a weight, it's not going to go very far, but it should go in that same direction.
Yep. It should
And
be
if you,
fairly straight through it.
because what happens if you shoot an open stance is you're putting pressure on the back of your hand to force it because the bow wants to pull it towards you
Hmm.
because you're not pushing straight away. So when it goes off, your hand goes out. If
Correct.
you're right, if left-hander, it goes the other direction, but it goes towards the back of your hand. And you can watch that. Especially on a camera, if you can get up above, you can see that hand is moving sideways. And as it moves sideways, it's like how much pressure are you putting sideways? As you start getting more tired, are you putting more power into holding that arm from collapsing on you?
Very true. I mean, and that's one of the other things too is you always want to keep that bow shoulder down.
Right.
A lot of people you'll see them as they start getting fatigued, that shoulder keeps coming higher and higher and higher, and then their shot starts deteriorating, and they're wondering why. Well, one, you need to build up your stamina. Two, you need to keep that shoulder down. That's why they teach a certain way of drawing the bow. Keep your release hand up high, your elbow high, and your shoulder low, and then you have the ability to pull through and get into your anchor points.
Yeah. I see lots of times they'll raise that arm way up and try and draw and pull it down. Well, now you're trying to pull down, which is weak. So what I teach actually is point your hand towards the target, lean slightly forward, which also actually raises that arm up slightly because it's pointing at the target as you're leaning over, and you draw and you stand up. What happens if you don't do that is now you're leaning back.
Yeah, yeah, you
And
can.
now then that puts the shoulder in a weird position. And if you don't keep that shoulder down, you're going to have rotator cuff problems. You're probably going to need surgery on that shoulder.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
that's
what a lot of the
definitely
old
as an archer,
archers
that's
had.
something you don't want.
Yeah, a lot of the old archers had that problem because one, they're drawing, quite a bit of weight, and that shoulder is pushed up, and you always watch that. I like put my hands on the shoulders, like relax the shoulders, like oh, shoulders drop down. And it's so much easier, and you see them, they'll draw across their chest, and raise up. Well, for one thing, you're using your chest muscles, which is weaker than your back muscles, and you're using your arms, which is weaker than your back muscles. Get up there, squeeze the shoulder blades together, that iron automatically comes back. You're going to pull more weight. And I see
And you're
them
not
in
going to hurt
videos all
yourself
the
at the end
time.
of the day doing that too.
No,
You pull in the front of you, you're putting stuff in the way. You could injure your biceps or something like that because by that time you're doing that, you're using bicep force at that point.
right.
And your bicep can only take so much abuse before it finally gives out.
Well, and then when you look at, I see a lot of wrist straps tied onto the hand.
Mm,
It's not
hmm.
it's not a hand strap, it's a wrist strap. So if you see, I don't know if those watching you can see, but if you're not watching, take your hand and rub from your little finger. Hold your hand so your palm is face away from you. Take your finger and rub along your little finger, and then you get to the wrist, you're gonna see that little bump drops down. You want your wrist strap to be above that on the elbow side of that wrist. So now as you're holding that, your hand can move independently. If you put and hold on that, you can't move your hand. Now, to see the difference between that, hold it out in front of you, grab your hand and pull. Where do you feel the pressure? You feel it in the wrist itself and the shoulder. Now, grab above that joint and pull. You don't feel it in the wrist because there's no strain on it, and you don't feel it in the elbow. You can pull with the back muscles, and that's where you're going to pull, and that's kind
And
of a
definitely keeping that wrist strap from being extremely tight. You want it to be about as tight as maybe a wristwatch. You want some play in it so you can pull through it.
yeah. You just don't want it so loose that it slides over that bone and
Yeah.
onto the hand because now then that moves the release forward, and just on a wrist strap, You take from the tip of the finger, go to the second joint down is where the trigger needs to be, not at the tip of the finger. Firearms, yes, you want it at the tip. Archery releases, you want them that second one. So what you can do is you're going to curl your hand around so it's nice and relaxed. And now you're going to all you can do is just put a little pressure on it. If you don't put pressure on it, it's never going to go off. But as you pull back, you can fire it. I take my wrist strap and my handheld and I shoot them exactly the same. I don't change anything except where my hand touches my face is different. Now my knuckle on the index finger is in that pocket behind the jaw, right at the base of the ear. There's actually a
Correct.
pressure point in there. Now, when using the handheld, my ring finger is at that spot, but I have a kisser button and a peep, so the string doesn't change. What my hand can do, it can twist around where hands flat or pointing sideways. That changes, but nothing else changes because the peep, the nose, and the kisser button. So I can shoot either one, makes no difference which one I have.
Yeah, and that's something you got to learn too. Is you got if you're if you're going to be using a thumb button or a hinge, and your backup is going to be a wrist strap, you've got to learn to be able to use both because your anchor point's not always going to be the same. It could mess with your draw length a little bit. So you got to learn both of those and be able to be successful in using them.
That's why your draw link's set for the one, and then if your release is set up correctly on the wrist strap, it's the same draw length.
Yep.
That's the key is you want the same draw length, and the only difference is the position of your hand.
Yep.
And that's fortunately if you use a handheld and you put it very into your hand, where that trigger on that handheld is right about at that same knuckle.
Yeah.
So as you're using it, that's at that same spot. So you use the other one, just hand just turns and there's a trigger there, as opposed to the trigger being buried into your hand. Now you'll see some of the handhelds are at the finger, and now you got to touch the thumb on it. You got to curl the thumb around it. Well, by
Mm.
burying it into my hand, I don't need to reach for that thumb because it's into my hand. It's actually part of my hand. I can grip it. And then I
Yeah.
always put a lot of pressure on with my thumb goes on. There's a spot for your thumb to sit, and I can squeeze that pretty hard. And then as it come back, now anytime you use one of those, not a beginner, don't grab a handheld release because you're probably going to smack yourself in the mouth. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we've
Buddy
all
of mine
been
did
there, done
that.
that at least once.
Buddy of mine did that with just a regular wrist strap.
Mm.
He didn't learn the concept of put your finger behind it. He was a finger shooter for decades.
Oh yeah.
And first thing it is to get, and it's like, damn thing hit me in the mouth. And it's like, it failed. No, Mike, you pulled the trigger when you drew.
Yep. Keep your finger behind the trigger.
I always have an indent on the back of my index finger on the nail side because I put my finger behind the trigger, and it's such a stretch to get it back there because the trigger is here, so I got to get back past it. So I
Hmm.
got some pretty good pressure forward on it. So as I'm drawn, it's not going to go off because I'm forcing that trigger forward. And then I pull my finger out and then rest it on there. When I get ready to start my shot presses, I put a little pressure on the trigger and then pull through.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something you got to watch for, and because you're going to make the mistake at least once, and you're going to learn it. Going, I ain't never doing that again.
Because when it goes off, where's that hand going towards?
Right to the face every time. I've actually done that when I was trying to learn how to use a hinge, and you learn it once or twice, and you're like, okay, what am I doing wrong? And then you figure it out from there.
Yeah, because those fire by just rotating them. So you got to really make sure. I don't shoot with one of those, but I have shot them a few times. You got almost your index finger pull that and let go completely with the little finger. So
Yep.
really, you're forcing that thing really forward. And now, as you get in there, you start making it come back, and then it'll eventually go off. You fire them slightly different than you do, a regular handheld. Those hinges are a little bit different. But
Yep.
I
A
know
little
guys that hunt
thought
with the
process
hinge.
goes into it.
Yeah, I know guys that hunt with the hinge.
Yeah, I couldn't. There's no way. I'd be so nervous the entire time.
Well, they shoot thousands of shots with the hinge, and it's just
True.
normal for them. I just like I hunt with my handheld because that's what I shoot all the time with it. And it's nice because I can just hang it on the bow and let it hang there and look at the deer, grab the string and slide my hand down. There's the release, and I don't have to look at it.
Yeah. And most hinges you can't do that with. There's very few out there that have that ability to just clip it on and it's there.
Yeah, there. I don't know if I've seen any actual hinge that you can do that with. There
Yeah.
may be some out there, I don't know, but
Yeah. I don't know if even the Ibex does it or not.
yeah, not something I'm gonna try.
I definitely don't disagree with you. Once you find one you like, you try to keep with it, and because that's what you know and that's what you've learned with, and you know all the ins and outs of it.
Yeah, and the thing I can say for beginners, buy a cheap bow, buy a cheap arrow, get a cheap sight, cheap rest, buy an expensive release.
Yep. Release and probably I would say probably rest would be my second thing you would probably want to spend your money on, just because a lot of places want to put you into a whisker biscuit to start you out. That works until you're like, oh, I want to start tinkering with arrows, and well, then you start putting some helical into that fletch. You're putting some offset into it, and then you're wondering why you're tearing up your fletches, or it's just not hitting where you want it to hit.
Right, because you do have 100% contact with your arrow
Yep,
because that
100%
fletching
contact.
has to go through that biscuit.
Yep.
Um, it's good for somebody that is just starting out that wants to try and torque their bow
Yeah.
because it won't come off the rest. Um, but other than that, if you want to be accurate, you're not going to use a biscuit.
No,
Um,
no, that's
you're
definitely just a bare shaft and just figuring out what bow you want to figure out and shoot. So,
yeah, and a lot of the kits come with a biscuit just because it's inexpensive and you know uh, yeah, like you said, that's kind of probably going to be the second thing you want to upgrade on your bow. And there's no reason why have to go out and buy the high dollar bows.
yeah.
I know, Matthews and Hoyt and PSE and, those are kind of the three main original ones. But then you've got Bowtech, you've got Elite, you've got, uh, I'm drawing a blank, some of the other ones, but
Yeah, and that's like one of the big things too that I've seen out and about. Sorry, I got to grab my charger. My phone's dying a little bit faster than I thought it would.
oh,
Um, yeah. So like, and that's like one of the big things that Bear did, and it's super impressive that they came out with a um their their lineup where you could get a full bow setup for $600 or $700. Like you just don't see that very often. That you can get a full bow setup. The only thing you got to buy is a release in your arrow, whatever arrows you want. So you can't beat that kind of money for that.
no.
Just a beginner, like that's so impressive that they've made that accomplishment for people to be able to do.
I know about 25 years ago when I had my store, I bought it in 2001 and then I sold it in 2004. But I had PSE had their Nova bow, which they also the Dan Fitzgerald bow for a while because he sponsored it. And basically, it's all the same bow. They just what name they put on the bow.
Yeah.
And they had three different draw um, weights in them and lengths. There's three different ones, and those were about $250. You could go Walmart and buy them. And I sold mine a little bit more than that because you couldn't price compare
Mm.
because I got the bow, it was set up. We've tied some string silencers on it. We just call them poofa balls. What you do is take the skirting you use for bass jigs
Mm-hmm.
and we'd cut them about 3 or 4 inches long, about four of them. We'd wrap them around the string and then we'd use end loop serving on it, tie them really tight and pull them and cut them. They form little balls. We'd put that on all of them.
Oh yeah, and there's
Just as
some
something
people
to
actually
do.
doing that now, even on their compounds. And Matthews, we use the monkey tails on ours, but I've seen guys with Matthews do what you just said with all kinds of colors to match what
Oh,
they want.
Yeah, I've got probably a dozen different colors at least that I used
Yeah.
to make them out of. I use the string leeches on mine. I put them on the string and the cables as well.
Oh, really? I never
Yeah.
thought about putting them on the cables.
Well, take your cable and pull it and kind of pluck it, and it
Hmm.
rings, right?
Yep.
Put it in a press, put a leech in there or your monkey tails, and now do the same thing. It goes thud.
Yep. It
The
definitely it
ringing
would
is
silence
noise.
it for sure.
Yeah. Now it's going to slow your bow down, but I don't really care. I want it to be quiet because it's a 2001 bow, so
Yeah.
it's not quiet.
Yeah, definitely on older bows, that's not what they were concerned on. They were concerned on trying to get that feet per second up, just because the technology wasn't quite there yet to make it quieter. And now
Right.
with these bows today, they're so quiet.
Well, they don't jump out of your hand as much either. The difference is on the older bows, the limbs were longer and pointing out. So as you
Yep.
pull that back and you shoot, it goes forward. So the force of both the upper and lower limb are going forward away from your hand. So
Yeah.
they will jump out of your hand. Now then they come down with the parallel limbs where the limbs are contracted down and up. So when you shoot, they go straight up and straight down. The vibration is canceled out by the upper limbs cancel the lower limb out and lower upper and vice versa. So they sit in your hand a lot better and they're a little bit quieter.
and
Uh,
and that's some of the things that I've learned over the years too, where you would see these guys talk about these older bows that there was a lot of feedback and people loved that feedback, and now you don't get as much because you're trying to reduce the vibration, you're trying to reduce the sound, you're trying to reduce the wear and tear on the equipment because vibration goes through everything. It's not just in the bow,
right.
it's in the strings, it's in the sight, it's in your peep sight. So those are all things that are all going to get worn due to that vibration. Now you don't really have that feedback to worry about.
Well, and one of the feedback is talking about the positive feedback is you can feel when you had a good release because you could tell it hit your hand a certain way.
Yep.
You know it was a good release. If it doesn't hit your hand, then you gripped it. It's like so you can tell that good you can feel that good release. But there's no vibration, you don't have that little feedback into your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, so that's something that I always did. And one of the things I did with the Nova bow line is um, it seemed like all them come in, you pull them back and they creak. The
Oh
limb
yeah.
pockets wasn't greased, didn't have much lube in them. So all the techs knew when you get in one of those bows, we tear it down, we lubricate the limb pockets, put them back together, creak is gone.
Yep.
Um,
And
and
you'd
then
almost have to do it every year too.
yeah, and then we would some of them come with a stabilizer, just a piece of aluminum hunk on the front. Most of it hold the sling on. So we'd make sure all the bows had a sling. We'd put on a stabilizer. If they didn't, once they quit coming with stabilizers, we'd put, one of the real cheap, just inexpensive stabilizers on it, mostly to hold the sling on. We'd put 6 arrows in the quiver with tips. Now we didn't have them all set up because we cut them on and fletched them on site. We didn't have any pre-fletched arrows. We just bought raw shafts, and we had 3 and 4 inch vanes and 4 and 5 inch feathers. And feathers cost more than they did for vanes because they cost me more. And you come in and, well, what colors you want? Pick them.
Yep. And that was the easiest way to do it. It was just bear shafts, and that's how I do it. I buy nothing but bear shafts, and I shoot nothing but victory arrows, everything from their hunting arrows to the target arrows. I've got several different varieties of sizes and abilities for that, so I can make them whatever weight I want, whatever color fletches I want, and whatever stiffness I want. I don't have to worry about, well, now I got to cut these off because I don't like that whatever vein and put my own on. I can just buy bare shafts, buy all my components that I want, and just tinker with that and make it shoot the best that I possibly can.
Yeah, and we had a Joe Jan that will do straight or offset, hold 6 arrows at a time. We had a dozen of the BPE plastic Fletchers and
Mhm.
8 of the Bitzenbergers. So we could do straight or helical, and then we could do the cock feather up or down. So we could do it first. you had different receivers to them that way. So, we've got, over 2 dozen jigs and constantly doing before hunting season. We're constantly, there's arrows in all of them all the time.
Oh yeah. Especially like a
And
month before, everybody's like, oh, I gotta get new arrows. I'm like,
it,
why?
yeah,
Why
well,
why
it
would you
takes a
wait?
while.
You've had
Why would you
all winter
wait?
to figure it out.
And I used a lot of the Fletch type. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
I used a lot of that. So it's not quick. The CA glue is quick, but it's a little more brittle. So you can have problems with them coming off. And I'd wipe all the shafts down with denatured alcohol and get them nice and clean. And uh, now, if they wanted, I put wraps on clear up at the top and then fletch on the top of them. But on mine, I used it's a reflective white,
Okay,
and
yeah.
I'd fletch my arrows and I'd put them on below the fletching. So I'd cut them in half instead of being, what are they, the 12-inch long one or whatever they are. I'd cut them in half, put them below the fletching. So
Okay.
as I refletched, I didn't have to cut through the wrap.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that do it like that too. I was just watching a video today that somebody had their veins on and they put a wrap just on the front of that. So it had numbers and a logo all on it. So that was pretty neat to see. I'm not a big wrap guy. I've used them before, and I just never really tickled my fancy for it. I just kind of, it's just a wasted dollar for me. I'll just put
Well,
fletches on it, call it a day.
the only ones I put wraps on are my hunting arrows. And so a flashlight, I was looking around for an arrow that I shot, and I'd seen it underneath an evergreen tree because my flashlight hit the that little strip
Oh
and
yeah,
started glowing. Um, Other than that, I don't use wraps on any of my arrows, just on the hunting ones. Just makes them easier to find with, especially the LED flashlights. They really glow on those.
right, right. That's pretty handy. I never really thought about doing it that way because I've always used night lighted knocks for that scenario. Just because you can see that thing middle of the day or middle of the night, you'll be able to find it for sure.
Right. Nitrogen oxide. I had my arrow set up with Illuminoc, and I shot at this deer, and I did not see this branch that was between me and the deer.
Mm,
Well, the arrow caught the branch. What come flying out? The Luminoc.
yep,
I found the arrow. I didn't even look for the Luminoc because there's no way I could find it. Because a little bitty knock this, it's not lit anymore.
yep, yeah. It was broken, done and gone, and it's like, ah.
Yeah, it
And
went, it went flying out, and that how you turn them off. You just pull them out slightly. And when you
yep,
shoot, it turns them on. And now they got some now that there's a little button that pushes to turn them on you something. But the Luminox that time was just a wire that they pushed in and made contact. And
yeah. That's what I shoot now is a Luminox. I ended up testing out some Halo Nox, and I didn't care for the brightness and the way the knock fed on my serving. I just didn't care for it. The Luminox seemed to be a little more loose on there, and that's what I kind of like. I don't want it to be a hard snap. I want it just to be a slight click, and that'd be it.
so that with the other ones, you could have put a little bit thinner serving on
Yeah.
and taken care of that because there's different thicknesses of the center serving. Um, but why would you want to redo your center serving just for a knock?
Right, right, and that's what I'm finding out with my target bow that the more and more I mess with it, the more I'm noticing that my left and right misses or up and down misses seem to be coming from my knock fit. So I've got to get it reserved for my center serving, get it maybe a little bit thinner for that. Because I don't really want to change all my knocks. I like my knocks. I like the way they perform for me.
Well, and you can get your centers in different thicknesses. You can try the one that's using now and drop down just a little bit. You might
Yeah,
have to, do a different type of serving too, because there's several things you can use for center serving.
yeah.
Um,
And for me, I only use all natural colored strings. I don't like a bunch of the wax that it comes with it. So I try to keep it very little wax so there's not a lot of stretch in it and it'll stay fairly consistent through the life of the string.
do you make your own strings or you buy them?
I buy them from my shop that I'm sponsored out of, Kansas Archery Center here in Manhattan. And it's electric bowstrings. He makes them there in house.
Yeah, because I when I had my store, I used to make all the strings. It's nice if you can make your own strings or have someplace quick, a shop that makes them instead of ordering them in and waiting
Yeah.
for the shipping. And um, I had a guy one time call me up. It was probably an hour or so before we closed, and he said, do you have a string or can you make me a string?" And I think he had a Darton or something because the cams on the Darton are thinner than normal cams.
Yeah.
And I says, "Well, I can make you one tomorrow." He says, "No, I got a tournament tomorrow. I need it tonight." It's like, okay, stop on out. So he stopped in, and I was going to take care of him. It's just if he's got to do that, he needs a string. He needs a string because after he got done, he'd have to go to the range and shoot it in and make sure it all set up right.
Yeah.
So he comes in and knowing it was, um, had that skinnier one, I looped out the string, got it all ready, started putting the serving on, tested in the cam, and it was too big.
Hmm.
So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can drop a couple of strands or different serving, and because there's a lot of range, and a lot of them are like 12 to 14.
Yeah.
So I don't like odd numbers. If you do them at 14, I can drop down to 12 because the strings are plenty strong enough. That's why they give you a range good for your thickness. So I took that, basically threw all that material away because it was not worth trying to undo. It took me longer and it wasn't worth it. So I made another string. That one worked and got it all going back on his bow. And I think we're 45 minutes into it. Then he's going to go shoot at night. So I basically made a string and a half in 45 minutes.
That's pretty impressive because that that means you didn't have any stretch time for that string. You didn't
Nope.
pre-stretch string like that. You just made it.
Right. And the way I use 8125, BCY is 8125.
Mhm.
And there's very little, if any, stretch in that string. And the way I make them is different. A lot of them, like your zebra strings, the white is one strand, the black is a different strand. They're not tied together.
Yeah.
I wrap my first color on, I tie the second color to the first color and wrap it on,
Okay.
and then I tie those two ends together.
Hmm.
And then I'm putting in my jig and I'm forcing out as far as I can. And now I turn the arms because they're like two arms. I turn them and it puts lots of pressure on it. And I'll pull and stretch them. So I've stretched that string before I even do any serving on it.
Oh, that's good then. That's really good.
So that's why I don't get stretched in my strings because I'm not making them stretching them after I've made them. I've pre-stretched and I put a lot of force on them and probably not the best for the jig, but do whatever.
Yeah, it does the job, and that's what you're looking for it to do. And if you're not getting any complaints out of it, so be it.
Yeah, and then I put it back out, where it's supposed to be, and I'll look and see what it's this supposed to be, and now then I can look at what the length I want and how many twists I put in it, and there's like 3 or 4 twists per inch is what you normally put in a string, so I can increase that a little bit if I need to, and then I will serve the one end. I always serve the loop underneath so I don't have any loose strands. Like a lot of them, you see all these loose strands. I
Hmm.
serve that. So it's all together. So you don't have to worry about, okay, I didn't get those all the way on. I got part way on. Now I broke one of the strands.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I serve the end with it's a very thin serving. So I serve that and then I get that ready. And now then I will serve that one end and then I'll do the other side, once I got them. So that's locked in place. Then I'll serve the center and then I pull it in and serve the other one there and then do the center serving. And on a compound, you don't need much center serving.
No, you really don't. You only need a few inches to get what you're looking for.
Maybe an inch or below your knock point and an inch below. That's all you
Yep.
need. Now recurves, you need 3 inches up and 6 inches down.
Yeah, because you got to be able to string. You got to be able to string walk.
Well, not only that, but you're hitting your arm guard.
Yeah. 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 I wouldn't have thought about hitting your arm guard, but yeah, that's definitely what you'd want because that'll keep you from tearing up that string a little bit more.
Yeah, because the serving hits the arm guard and not the strands itself.
Yeah.
And so it don't take long to make a string. Even when I've made one for a while, they don't take me that long. I remember, and just serve them and then go from there and tie off the end There's a nice way. If you're watching some of my videos, I show you wrap around and go out a little ways, and then you run it the other way, and then you pull the string, and then you unwrap it, and it pulls in and pull it tight, and you're done.
Yeah.
You know, first time I seen a guy do that, it's like, what did he do? So then I sit there and it's like, okay, I figured out what he was doing. It's like, oh, that's because it was so cool and slick, because he got done serving it, and then he just pulled up a loop and then served it inside, going back towards where he's just at, and then pulled it out. And I normally loop it around the end loop and then start wrapping it around and then pull it. And I always use them. And now when I tie on um, loops, I've got a set the center shot. I have a laser you put on
Mm.
where your sight is. You take your sight off if you don't. So you bolt it into there, and then while it's in your bow press, you shine that back the laser and adjust that laser in and out until it's right centered on your string.
Hmm.
Now then you take that laser, you start running out down your shaft, and you adjust the rest until that laser is pointing at the tip of the arrow.
Okay.
Now you're perfect center shot. That's it. It's
Never thought
perfect.
about doing it like that, but that's
Yeah. And it's a laser. You can get them. They're a lot cheaper now than it was when I first got my first one. And then when you get ready to set your elevation, or now you've got your left right is good. Now your elevation. So now then you adjust your rest until that arrow is about halfway down that burger button.
yeah.
Now, traditional archers know what the burger button is because that's what they shot off of. But it's the best of the bolt to hold your rest on.
Yep.
So you want about halfway down through there. Now then you put a level on your string and you want it to be plumb. Then there's another level that you put on the tip of your arrow. So now you want that to be level. So with those two, now you have a perfect right angle. And then when I tie on my loops, I fold them in half and tie the upper knot and then pull it down next to it. And then I tie the bottom one, pull them up, and I squeeze them together. And with the arrow in there, I'm going to put like an Allen wrench or something, and I'm going to pull really tight. And
Yeah.
now then, there is no gap. That arrow will not move up and down any. It's locked in there by the serving. Now, I've seen some insist on tying a knot above it. You're not going to get your best flight,
Yeah.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's a lot of people that are discussing that right now that you don't need the upper soft knot. You don't need it.
nope,
You just need the lower one. And that way it gives that arrow just a little bit of cushion and you'll get a better results out of your arrow flight and you'll get better um, abilities to get higher points if that's what you're looking for.
right.
You have more
And
success that way.
the reason why you don't want that is because as you're pulling, the top knot pulls and the bottom knot pulls. Now you're not centered around that shaft because you got a gap. So where the center that it's pulling from is at the top of your arrow, not at the center of it. So now when you shoot, that force is going at the top of the arrow, not through the middle of the arrow. So the easiest way to see that is put a pencil on a table and take your finger and push on the eraser straight towards the tip. What's that pencil do? It moves straight.
Yep.
Now, slide your finger over a millimeter and now push. What's that arrow do? It turns sideways.
Yep.
That's
Yep. You
what you're
definitely
doing.
want your pressure to go through the center of that knock, center through the arrow, and through the tip. You never want it to be able to be one side or the other or up and down because it's going to make some weird paper tears. You're going to see some funky flights, and you'll see it, especially if you're shooting longer distance. You'll see that funky flight. Sometimes it's the wind. Most of the time, it's going to be the way you have it set up.
Right. And I can take a perfectly tuned bow and shoot a perfect hole or shoot a terrible hole.
Yep.
It's all in your release and your grip.
Yep. 100%.
And
And that's
I've had some say, I cannot get a good tear out of it. And I always tell them it's like, you know what? Let me shoot the bow. I'll get a good tear out. First I'll do is I'll put my laser on it, make sure you're center shot and make sure you're level. Be level and center shot. And if that is okay, then most likely it's your form. Uh,
yeah. And I did that before I went to Chicago. I was doing my paper tune, making sure that it was right. and I could get it close, and it would shoot great. Like I had a little bit of a tear. I think it was to the left. For indoors, you're not really worried about perfect timing. You're not worried about perfect tune because the bow's going to shoot however it's going to shoot the best, regardless if you're a little bit at a time here and there. It's still going to shoot. I know plenty of guys that run bows that they're like, I don't even paper tune it. I don't even tune the bow. I just start putting arrows through and seeing what it does.
And that's true because a bow, no matter how it's tuned, will shoot the same arrow in the same hole every time if you shoot on a shooting machine. You
Yep,
take all human error out of it, it'll put that arrow in the same hole every time.
100%,
It may not be
100%.
where your sights are at. You
Yeah,
got to adjust your sights, but you may not have an adjustment in your sight if you're too far out. But
yeah,
still, you can take and take a turn out of the upper limb and shoot. It's going to
yep,
be consistent. In fact, that's one of the tuning tricks that you can do
yep. Tiller
is,
tuning.
yeah, as you can take a quarter of a turn out of one of the limbs. Say your bow has got a little too much and it's kicking too much up and you can't get it out with a stabilizer. Maybe tweak that limb out just a quarter of a turn or an eighth of a turn and see what it does and do a quarter turn. I wouldn't go too far with it because then it gets way out of whack, but
Yeah,
still, that's
and that's
something
a
that you could try.
and that's an easy way too. If you want to get a little more draw length, you can micro tune your draw length by just giving a little bit of a turn out of your limb bolts because it's going to increase that draw length because you're making that limb a little longer or a little shorter.
Right.
And that's those are all things you learn over time, and it's something you should play with because all you gotta do is put it back to the way it was, and you be perfectly fine. Just keep your little note. I turned it this many turns. I did this one, and whatever you do to the top, you got to do to the bottom.
Right.
So,
Well, and then too, one of the things we used to do if somebody gets a bow that is too much weight for them, we can make a little longer, a little shorter string, and a little longer, a little shorter cable,
yep,
and that will add or take away. So you don't like do too much adding weight to it, but a lot of times you can't get the draw length and the draw weight down low enough, so you just make different strings and cables.
yep. Make them a
Um,
little bit shorter, a little bit longer, like you said, and you can achieve that draw length or that poundage that you're looking for out of any particular bow.
I did that with my daughter. The bow I got was 60-pound limbs, and you could down to 50. She still couldn't pull it back. So I need to get it down to 40. So I just made different length strings and cables, and it worked. Um, I had one guy come in the shop, and he wanted a bow, and the draw length he needed the different cams. So they sent in the new cam and still waiting for all the stuff for it. I was waiting and I says, okay, what are we waiting for? Well, we're waiting for a string. Got the cam. I said, send me the string, send me the cam, and how long a string do I need to make? So they sent the cam in. I made a string. Yeah, it was a target bow. It was kind of a maroon color. So I made him a silver and a mountain berry string,
Oh,
which
that'd
is
be
basically
nice.
kind of a maroon color string, and to fit it. Well, then it was just the plain black strings or cables, and I said we can't have that, so I made cables to go with it too. He
Yeah,
he was
there's
he was from Israel,
okay.
so then a couple of his guys over and brought it back, and finally he got his bow. That was yeah, it's kind of fun. It's just a different cam, and the string was different. So I just made both of them because it looked cool with that color on there because it kind of matched. And
Yeah,
that's what I make strings. People say, "What color? Well, what color you want? Black? No, you got to
and
have
that's
something
part of
else."
and that's part of making it the shoot better too. Is you got to make it look cool.
Right. Now, if the bow was all black with all black accessories, I'd have said, okay, now that makes sense.
Yeah,
But you got a camel bow and you got all these other accessories. Like, what are your favorite colors?
yeah. Let's make
Unless
it
it's a
stand out a little.
unless it's a fluorescent color, the deer don't see it anyway. Now there's a fluorescent green and I think a fluorescent yellow or something that probably wouldn't work too well on a hunting bow. Uh, but there's tons and tons of different colors that you can use, and now they got all these new string types out there, and the end loop material I used to use, BCY doesn't make that one anymore. Um, Brownell makes it. They make what I use so for recurves. So I'll probably have to order some Brownell stuff. But Brownell's what I'm seeing is not probably as good as it used to be. But I use exclusive BCY stuff when I had to order anything. I had so many different color strings that to make bows out of, both the compounds and recurves that you know I'll never run out of string material. I could
And it's one
probably
of those things you could always have and always need it.
I could probably make me a string once a week and still never run out of string material.
Oh my
Now
goodness.
the end loop stuff that I'd run out of, but the string material because they're the good sized rolls,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
and
you can only get them in them big rolls.
yeah, and I don't want them small ones anyway. But nice thing about one of those is you'd buy the roll of material and I make one string out of it, and the roll's paid for.
Yeah.
That was 25 years ago. Um, and now these strings I make now is kind of pure profit if I sell them.
Yeah. Yeah, and now with the string material that's out there, it's getting pretty wild as far as the material they're using, like gas. They came out with that System X, where it's their proprietary blend of strings that supposedly will get you more feet per second just by switching strings. Um, that's a huge advancement in archery because right now we're kind of coming into it like a stall of how fast we can get these things, how we can tune the bow faster and easier. Kind of get into that spot where it's starting to stall, I think. With Matthews coming out with their limb shift technology, Bowtech's had that technology for a while now, so you're starting to see companies do this more and more just to make it easier for the average guy to want to tune and not have to go to the dealer to do that.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's nice to take it somebody does a good job. It takes that thought of did I do it right?
Yeah,
Takes that worry out of your head that okay, did I do this right? Did I do this right? Well, if I take it somebody else, I'm thinking, okay, did they do it right?
yeah,
Because I know it's supposed to be done.
yeah. And it makes it that much easier for that dealer to get you set up in that bow. Like that is so nice. They don't have to spend a ton of time with like Matthews with the top hats now. Um, there's no back and forth. Well, look, go try this, see if this works. Well, that didn't work, so let's go back the other way. That takes up a ton of their time, and they don't have the time for that.
Yeah, a lot of the shops don't, um, really have a lot of time to really do that because, you know, what I did when I sold the bow is I also gave you shooting instruction with it. That's another reason why you can never price compare my bows, even though you could buy the same bow somewhere else. I had
Yeah,
one guy call me up one time and says, "You think I could put it together?" Well, yeah, of course you can put it together. But if you want it right, I charge $40 to set it up. Oh, by the way, that comes with the bow. And if you want shooting instruction, that's $100 an hour. Now this is $25, 25 years ago. And I'm
yeah,
like,
and now
I
it's a
think I'm
lot
going to
different.
take it back and get it from you.
Yeah,
Because I had come all set up and got shooting instruction. And, I had one guy, normally I'd sell the lower end bows just because new archers, there's no reason for you to go out and spend. Well, at that time, a entry level bow was 300, 350 bucks. And there's no reason for a new archer to go out and spend $1,000 on a bow.
yeah,
Get the upper ones, just the plain bow itself was, six, seven, $800, for the high end bows. And this one guy, he wanted the high end bow. He had the money, so it wasn't, he just wanted a high end bow. Taught him how to shoot. He comes back 2 weeks later. It's like, damn, I wrecked two arrows. He got a robin head 2 weeks after he bought his first bow. He'd
hey,
never shot before.
hey, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's an achievement because we all strive to do that, and then when we do it, we're like, there goes $40.
Yeah. Well, at that time it wasn't quite that expensive, but still, he says it's trophy gonna hang it. He's gonna hang it up in his office.
Yep. And
I,
it's something you don't get to do every day. That's Robin
no,
Hood's not something you do every single day.
no, I've done quite a few of them, but I had,
Yeah, I
I
try to avoid it as much as I
yeah,
possibly can.
I had two of them when I was working at Cabela's.
Mm,
Um, One, they got in a bow from Bowtech, and we set it up. I took two shots, stuck two of them together, and then we set up for like three of us. We shot up different draw lengths, everything. Set up, worked just fine. Then the hunting manager come down and says, "We need to pull them off the floor. They're having all kinds of problems setting them up." And it's like, here, I just did this with this bow. And we had two or three others. So I said, why don't we set up the other ones to see if it's just we got a good one? He says, no, we can't do that. So they sent them back, and then
mm.
later on the bow showed back up again, and so that was one. And the other one, a guy come in with wanted a drop weight. He just couldn't group. So he's convinced that a drop weight rest would solve his problem. So I put a drop weight on it. And how do you test a drop away? You got to shoot it.
Yep.
So there's guys in the range just sitting there watching another buddy who's being taught by a different, associate there. I shot one arrow, and of course I aimed at that arrow, and I shot the next arrow, stuck the two of them together, and then when the guy comes, it's like I couldn't get it to group nothing. It's like I look at him. What I want to say is, dude, it's you, because I just stuck to this. I told him, I told him
Yeah,
it's like I just got a Robin Hood with your bow.
yeah. Because if you don't have a draw board, you have to shoot it. So that's the only way you can test those is with a draw board or just shooting it and seeing what it's going to do.
And I just shoot them. And fortunately, it's a right-handed bow and about my draw length, so I could shoot it just fine. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like um, I I think the rest is set up okay. I just Robin Hooded an arrow. In fact, if you look on my profile, I have a picture of a Robin Hood. There were veins because they were the ones I shot when I those are the arrows that I shot and that were there.
Okay.
One of the two sets. I don't remember which one it was, but that was Robin Hood I shot when I worked at Cabela's,
Okay.
and I was like, I had a picture of it, and I was able to pull it off and pull off the arrows, and because
It's
most of
always
mine
nice
I
to have those
have been
memories.
falling apart. And one time I showed a couple of in one of the videos I did, I showed the difference in quality of carbon arrows, and I had uh, a set of my PSE arrows shot at 70 pounds at 20 yards and how far it went into that shaft. And then I showed another set of cheaper arrows that I almost guarantee was not shot at 70 pounds because most people didn't shoot that weight. And it went through the shaft way further. The penetration was a lot more. That just proved that that was a cheaper quality shaft.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not as rigid as some of the other arrows that are out there.
Aluminums are pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
When you because they get kind of a zigzag, kind of like almost like a square wave as it goes in, how
Hmm.
it breaks them. It was kind of weird.
I've never seen that, so that'd be pretty impressive. I mean, we not very many people use a aluminum arrow anymore for hunting, so that's kind of neat.
Well, that was back when I was shooting aluminums before carbons really come out.
Yeah, yeah. Back probably 30 years ago, carbon was not a typical hunting arrow. Aluminum was the way to go because it was more consistent.
Yeah, I know when the first carbons come out, if you broke them, you had a lot of carbon fibers just shatter.
Oh yeah.
So if you had to be careful because you get those little carbon fibers in your hand if they broke. And I says, I'll never use a carbon because I can't take a chance of having those little carbon fibers in the meat. And then they finally come out with a little bit better quality ones. PSC come up with their crossweave arrows,
Hmm.
and then they come out with their X weave. And nice thing about them is they actually went to an aerospace company to manufacture their arrows because
Oh
most
really?
aero companies could not meet their standards.
Hmm.
It's pretty interesting when they told us that.
Yeah, because I
But
mean
yeah,
that shows you where the technology is started and went from.
Well, in fact, on those shafts, one night when I had my store, I had a broadhead target up and I was trying to get ready for hunting season. And I shouldn't have been shooting because I was tired, but I shot and I missed. And I have a concrete wall.
Ooh.
I stuck the broadhead, the Muzzy broadhead, in the concrete block wall. I go up there, the broadhead sticking in the wall, and the shaft is laying on the ground with the inserts broken half and it's cracked back about an inch.
Oh,
I
yeah.
pulled the Muzzy broadhead out of the block. It wasn't in very far. I couldn't tell you which one it was because it got mixed back in with my broadheads.
That's pretty impressive. But Muzzy makes a really good broadhead though.
Right.
They have always made a very good product, and it can withstand a lot of things for that.
Yeah. And just the shafts, at one time completely missed. They had them steel hollow doors, commercial doors,
Hmm.
not the cheap ones used for house. These are the tough ones. And we hit probably a quarter of an inch from the edge of the door, and it went through the door.
Oh my goodness.
Not all the way through, but it went quite a ways in, and I had to try and pull it out. It did not hurt the shaft. It didn't hurt the point because it's just rather field point.
Yeah.
I normally use bullet points, so they're pretty tough. So it didn't hurt the shaft at all.
Hmm.
Sticking in a steel door.
It's a good arrow. I mean that, and that's not something you test all the time. Going, I'm gonna see how strong this arrow is. But when you do, you're like, oh, wow, that's impressive.
But don't catch it on the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think any arrow stands up to that.
No. No. And that's like when annihilators came out. They were shooting them through, car hoods and stuff. So that was pretty impressive to see that that broadhead could take a pretty good abuse from that over and over and over and never really damage the broadhead any.
Yeah, those are, when they come up with nice, tough broadheads, that's definitely something that is nice to have. You know, it's going to stand up. And I know that Muzzy's bad. They say they're bad to the bone. Well, I took some pictures of how bad it was to some of the bones.
Oh yeah.
I I I caught my before I knew I was shooting too long a draw length, and I caught my arm when I was out hunting. The big heavy coat,
Hmm.
and this deer just kind of stood there and turned around, and it walked off a little bit and laid down, and yeah, I was able to shoot it again, but it eventually died. And then as I'm cleaning it, I figured out why it didn't run. It shattered the thigh bone.
Mm.
There's a big
Yep.
chunk of the middle of it out, and you can see where that point hit that bone and just shattered that bone.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I haven't used any other broadheads except the Muzzies, and that's been since the 70s.
And they
Um,
really haven't changed their product. Like it's tried and true. They haven't really changed a whole lot in their design and the way they make them.
they still make that same. I use the 100 grain 3 blade. They
Hmm.
still make that same one, but they've got some. I seen when I was out at Cabela's last time. They do have a couple other models are coming out. I think they had something. I thought it might be a hybrid one or something.
Yeah, I think they are coming out with a hybrid. I think that started out last year making it where it's got some like meat hooks on it or bleeders on it. So
Yeah. Now their turkey head is kind of neat. It's only two sharp blades and then two dull blades
yeah,
to just plunge it to not go through that turkey because you don't need too many blades to go through there.
nope, nope. You don't need a whole lot to go through a turkey. They're pretty soft.
No. Yeah, they're
They're
pretty
tough
soft.
though. They're tough.
But yeah, that's now everybody wants to be faster, 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 faster. Well, at some point, you're not going to get mechanic broadheads that are fixed blades to fly that fast.
Yeah,
At some point, you have to go to mechanicals just because it's too hard to tune. Even at the slower speeds, under 300 feet per second, you can tune them just fine.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Those mechanicals, and that's what I shoot. I shoot mega meats, G5 mega meats, and they fly perfect, even at 300 feet per second.
yeah, so when you start getting above that, now my muzzies do not fly like my field tips.
No,
Not even
they, and
close.
they most mechanic or fixed blades will not. It's pretty rough to
But
see one to see that it flies the same as a field point. It's rough to see that.
but all my broadheads fly the same as each other because
Yeah.
I tune them to do that. Um, and I have a bow I hunt with and another, and I got a well, I actually got two other bows, but I have another bow that I use for target, and that's set up for field points. So if I was to use that for hunting, I'd probably go to a mechanical just because I don't want to reset up all my pins.
Yeah.
Um, but the other one is all set. It's set up to shoot the muzzies. And if I just shooting regular field tips in it, I know they're not going to hit where I'm aiming. But if I'm shooting at a five spot, as long as they're hitting in the same spot on each one, or shoot a single spot, they should start stacking in.
Yeah.
Because you're not looking at your area, you're looking at your spot. So, I know they're off by probably about 3 inches.
Yeah. And you can just mentally adjust for that, going, okay, I need to aim here instead of here. So,
Yeah. But if I use the other bow, then I don't have to worry about it. I just use that one for hunting and
well, Roy, I think it's getting kind of late and I've got to get going.
yeah,
I appreciate you bringing me on here. It was a pleasure. I hope we can do it again sometime because I really like our conversations and where they kind of lead to. It's nice to have that open dialogue and just kind of float and see where it goes.
yeah, and that's what I do on all the podcasts. Like there's no agenda other than we start talking archery, like I said earlier. We start talking archery. Where we go doesn't really matter. It's so much fun talking to archers from all over the world, and you're real close to me here, just probably a couple hours south of me.
Yep. And I've been trying to get up to Nebraska. They've got a field event coming up, I think here in the next month or so that I might try and go to. I haven't decided yet. I don't have a whole lot of stuff for field archery. Um, that's definitely something that's going to be in the process since now that we are able to go into the Olympics and do that. So it's kind of cool as a compound shooter.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, if you come up this way, get a hold of me and let me know,
Oh, for
and
sure.
maybe I'll stop out and we can chat in person.
Oh, yeah. That would always be fantastic.
Okay, well, it's been great having you on, and get something coming up. You come up to that field archery, we'll have to get you back on, and we'll talk about that field archery, and maybe we'll do a live event at the event,
There you
a
go. That
live
would be
podcast
awesome.
at the event.
Right. Well, I
You know,
appreciate you inviting me to come to your podcast, and I hope to see it come out here shortly, and then we'll hopefully be able to do it again soon.
yeah, I'll probably put it out. Yeah, if I get a chance, I'll get out tonight. I'll try and get out tonight. If not, um, yeah, it'd probably be tonight. Otherwise,
Okay.
it won't be till Monday. But I have another podcast I'm recording tomorrow night. So,
There you go.
and I'm going down tomorrow morning to help the Nebraska Game Parks with their um, they've got a ladies archery event going on, and I help out them with them pretty much every year. And I'm going down Saturday for that. So I'll
It's
wait for
always
this to
fun.
get done, and I'll get the podcast out, and it don't take long to put it out. So I'll get it out tonight, and um, we'll see. We'll see you on the next one. And it's been a lot of fun talking with you, and I enjoyed it. My name is Roy
Likewise.
Canterbury, and I've been your host on Arch Talk 101 with Travis Woods as our special guest. And we'll see you on the next one. Just remember, join the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group. We got a lot of information there. You can watch it here. You can watch the video of this podcast on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself, as well as Audible. You can listen to it and wherever you get your podcasts. So it's out there. If you have any questions, just get a hold of me or Travis, one of the two. We'd be glad to help you out with any questions you might have. If you'd like to be a guest, get a hold of me. We can arrange that too. So it's been great talking with you, and we'll see you at another time.
Appreciate you, Roy. Have a good night.
Yeah, thanks.
Mhm.